Welcome to this recorded Food Action Group's presentation, which shares findings from our focus group sessions held in regional and remote communities across Western Australia in 2023. This presentation will focus on participants' perceptions on structure and stakeholder involvement in Western Australia. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which I'm dialing in from and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. The Food Action Group's project aims to address food security in regional and remote areas of Western Australia. Food security being a situation that exists when all people at all times have physical, social and economic access to sufficient, safe and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and preferences for an active and healthy life. There are 6 different dimensions of food security, and within each dimension there are a number of different determinants that influence a person's ability to be food secure. For example, at the food availability dimension, we need to make sure that food is available for people in outlets or alternative food networks, and that food is a sufficient price and of good quality. At the food access dimension, we have social support and networks, which are important to help people with social access to food. We also have distance to outlets in terms of how far people need to travel to access their food. At the food utilisation dimension, we have nutrition, knowledge and cooking skills. So once people have found food and they've been able to access it, this is about using it in an appropriate way to maximise nutrient needs and prepare food safely. Here we also have IT technology literacy, so sufficient access and knowledge to use technology to complete activities such as ordering groceries, finding recipes and interpreting nutrition information. And then we have the stability of the first 3 dimensions: food availability, access and utilisation. This can be impacted by influences such as weather, political factors and economic factors such as fluctuations in the economy, which impacts the price of food. The agency dimension refers to the capacity of individuals and groups to exercise control over their own circumstances, so people having ownership about the food they're eating and having a voice to shape policies around food security. Finally, the sustainability dimension refers to the food system practices that respect and protect the ecosystems. So these are those practices that contribute to long-term regeneration of the environment to ensure that people's current food needs are met without compromising food needs of people in the future. As you can see, food security is a complex problem and addressing it requires a collaborative and dynamic approach. And food action groups are one potential solution to improve food security issues in regional and remote communities. Food action groups are a mechanism to bring together stakeholders that work across the food supply chain to co-create solutions to local food problems. These types of groups, often known as food policy councils or local food partnerships, have been operating for around 20 years in countries like the USA, Canada and in the UK. Some examples of stakeholders that are often a part of food action groups include people from agriculture, education, health, government, social services, emergency food relief organisations, retailers and community members, among others. And these groups may work to address issues across the whole food supply chain or focus on one particular part, such as food access. They may operate at a state or local level, be embedded within government or separate too. They may be volunteer run or employ paid staff. It really depends on the local context and community needs. Our team wanted to learn more about their work, so we conducted a scoping review to explore the impact these food action groups are having on local food systems in high-income countries. And we found these food action groups are positively impacting food systems across the globe through a range of activities. Some of their impacts and activities include increasing food system equity through decreasing reliance on, but also increasing the quality of charitable food. This may be in the form of a social supermarket, a more dignified approach to charitable food, where people pay a membership to access low-cost food items. They're also increasing knowledge and demand for healthy food through education programs around growing or preparing healthy foods. They're also increasing access to healthy food through advocating to local governments to include food-related objectives in local strategies such as public health plans. Additionally, they're increasing environmental sustainability through surplus food projects or working with restaurants or cafes to try to decrease their waste through award schemes, education and training. And finally, they're supporting food system resiliency and increasing economic development through local food procurement strategies, so getting locally grown foods into hospitals, aged care and prison meals to support local farmers and communities to retain that economic benefit. No food action group model exists in WA, so in 2023 we held stakeholder and community focus groups throughout regional and remote towns across the state to hear people's thoughts on whether a food action group could help to improve food security in their community. We know the issues affecting food across WA are quite diverse, and so understanding the local context is important. So at these focus groups we asked questions like, if a food action group were to be established in your region, which stakeholders need to be involved, and how could the group be structured to support a positive impact in your region? 92 participants attended 19 focus groups we held throughout WA. Each session was recorded using Microsoft Teams, and once all the sessions were complete, the team analysed all the data to see what common themes developed. I will now share some of these findings from a statewide perspective. Based on our team's scoping review of international food action groups, we found that involving a variety of stakeholders in food action groups was very important for their establishment and sustainability. As already mentioned, this included representatives from local government, public health, environmental health, agricultural departments and community members, among others. Research suggested that ensuring a diversity of stakeholder representation from across the food system and from public, private and charitable sectors was crucial. This diagram here summarises the stakeholders that our focus group participants identified as important for a food action group to be effective in WA. Participants highlighted the importance of including diverse stakeholders, including community members, to ensure inclusivity and long-term sustainability. Engaging food supply actors and local government was regarded as essential to supporting local food systems, addressing food waste and influencing policies. Participants also recognised the role of local businesses, community services, health organisations and educational institutions in contributing to the success of food action groups in WA. Again, through our scoping review, it was found that food action groups could be structured in several ways, such as embedded within or external to government, or as a not-for-profit. They may feature a formalised internal governance structure with a committee and a terms of reference to support transparent decision-making, and some groups comprised paid staff, while others are volunteer-driven. This diagram here summarises the potential group structure that our focus group participants identified as important for an effective food action group in WA. Key themes included establishing formal structures and sustainable funding, being driven by community needs, engaging with government while maintaining community roots, embedding the group within an existing organisation for resource leverage and utilising smaller, localised groups to address specific regional issues. Finally, independent, not-for-profit models were also favoured for flexibility and autonomy. In light of these findings, it's our recommendations that when establishing food action groups, it's important to strategically engage with a diverse range of community members and stakeholders to ensure representation across sectors to better identify community needs. For example, ensure representation from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander groups and leaders, local producers, food retailers, community representatives such as the charitable food sector or community gardens, and local government. It's also important to encourage food action groups to develop formal governance mechanisms, such as incorporating as a not-for-profit organisation with a management committee, documenting meeting minutes, and forming working groups, focusing on themed action areas to guide their practice. This brings us to the end of this Food Action Group's presentation, which summarises our participants' perspectives on structure and stakeholder involvement in WA. We would like to acknowledge our project partners and funders, which are listed here. Thank you for listening to this presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us. You can also follow us on Facebook to keep up to date with the project and head over to our website to access a variety of resources.